Walking had become a ritual, footsteps on sand, on stone, on broken glass. Each step followed a meaning, but that meaning never came. Kyle could no longer walk without feeling the weight on his back. It was as if the body had forgotten balance without weight, as if the back became a stranger when empty. The sun was overhead, but the light was strangely pale. The atmosphere, as if filtered, painted everything in a matte yellow. Mountains stood on the horizon, but those mountains never drew closer. Kyle had been walking for 12 days, and the mountains were still the same distance away. Cargo boxes were strapped to his back. 2 large, 1 small. He didn't know what was inside. He wasn't supposed to know. A carrier was someone who didn't ask about contents. A carrier was only someone who reached the destination. Kyle had accepted this because asking meant attachment, and attachment meant loss. There was no wind, there was never wind here, only air. Still thick air that made breathing a bit harder. Kyle filled his lungs and waited. Sometimes even breathing required a decision. Sometimes the body forgot what was necessary. On the right side of the road stood an old highway sign, half buried in the ground, half exposed. The letters on it were no longer readable. Kyle stopped. He crouched beside the sign. He dug the dirt a little with his hand, but no meaning emerged. It wouldn't anyway. Nothing here had meaning anymore. Only places existed, and people had stopped naming them. Kyle stood up. His knees cracked. He was 32 years old, but his body felt older. Weight didn't just rest on the back. It rested on the bones too. As he walked forward, something broke under his foot. He bent down to look. A plastic toy. Maybe a car, maybe an animal, it didn't matter. Kyle picked it up. It was light. Very light. Lightness was strange here. Light things were meaningless things. Meaningless things were things that no longer existed. He put the toy in his pocket. He didn't know why. Maybe because it was so light. Maybe because it was something someone once believed needed carrying. He kept walking. It was approaching 2 o'clock. The sun had lowered a bit, but was still hot. Kyle didn't wipe the sweat from his forehead. Wiping sweat meant remembering the body. Remembering the body meant remembering pain. Kyle didn't want to remember pain, not yet. Ahead, kilometers away, there was a structure, small, maybe a station, maybe just a ruin. Kyle didn't look at the destination. Looking at the destination made the distance felt. Feeling the distance summoned fatigue. So Kyle only looked at his steps. Left foot. Right foot. Left. Right. Ritual. A voice spoke inside him. It wasn't his own voice, or it was, but it wasn't familiar. How much can you carry? Kyle didn't answer. He never answered the voices inside, because answering made them real. They don't see you. To them, you're just a shadow. Kyle fixed his eyes on the ground. There were footprints. Old footprints. Maybe his own. Maybe someone else's. It didn't matter. Here, every print went in the same direction. Forward. At 3 o'clock, he stopped. He shifted the weight on his back slightly. His shoulders had gone numb. There was tingling in his fingertips. Kyle opened and closed his hands. Blood flow was slow. Slowness was normal here. Everything was slow, even time. He took a water bottle from his bag. It was half full. Kyle took a small sip. He held the water in his mouth. He waited before swallowing. Water was remembering. Water meant body. Body meant weakness. He swallowed. He put the bottle back. He kept walking. His shadow was in front of him now, long and thin. Kyle looked at his shadow. Shadow was always more honest than truth. Shadow showed how crooked he stood, how heavy what he carried was. These lands once had a name, but no one remembered. Maps had burned. Servers had crashed. Satellite networks had shattered. Only walking people remained. And walking people didn't need place names. They only needed directions: north, south, east, west. Kyle was heading north. There was a settlement in the north. Its name was Collapse. The name was ironic because Collapse was the only place still standing. Settlement was an exaggeration: 20, maybe 30 people, a few buildings, a water well, a solar panel, a generator, and a radio tower. The radio was important because radio meant connection, radio meant orders, orders meant carrying. Kyle lived by orders from the radio. He did nothing else. He had forgotten how to do anything else. At 4 o'clock, wind rose. A light wind. Kyle stopped. Wind was rare here. When wind rose, people stopped because wind meant change. Change meant danger. Kyle looked at the sky. There were no clouds, only that matte yellow light. The wind came from the east. East was the direction of the past. No one lived in the east anymore. The wind stopped. Kyle kept walking. As he moved forward, he saw something in the middle of the road. Something black. Kyle slowed down. He approached. A bag. An old backpack. It was open. It was empty. Kyle picked up the bag. The fabric was worn. The zippers were broken. The straps were torn. The bag had been abandoned. Abandoned bags told stories here. An abandoned bag meant the carrier had abandoned it. A carrier abandoning meant two things. Either they had died or they had given up carrying. Kyle dropped the bag. He walked. Evening approached. The sun lowered. Light turned red. Kyle knew he was approaching the destination, but he didn't look. Looking would summon haste. Haste meant mistakes. The voice inside spoke again. Do you remember them? Kyle held his breath. You should remember, because they remember you. Kyle stopped. His feet took root in the ground. The weight on his back felt heavier. Kyle closed his eyes. He didn't remember. No, he didn't want to remember. He opened his eyes. He walked. And that voice didn't speak again. When the day ended, Kyle reached the structure. It was an old station. The walls were cracked. The roof was half collapsed, but the door was solid. Kyle pushed the door. It creaked, but opened. Inside was dark. Kyle reached into his pocket and took out a small flashlight. He turned on the light. The light illuminated a narrow corridor. At the end of the corridor was another door. Kyle moved forward. His steps echoed. Echo was the sound of loneliness. When he opened the second door, he saw a room. A table in the center. A piece of paper on the table. A note on the paper. Kyle took the paper. He read, You who come from the north, leave your cargo. Go south. They're waiting for you. Kyle put the paper on the table. He took the weight off his back. He placed it slowly on the ground. Leaving cargo was a strange relief. But that relief immediately brought emptiness. Emptiness was what Kael feared most. He went outside. Night had fallen. There were no stars, no moon, only darkness, and in the darkness far away, a small light. South, Kael looked at the light and began to walk.